Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward, and this is Face to Face. Our guest this week is Oji-Cree multi-instrumentalist, producer, and singer-songwriter Aysanabee. He broke onto the scene in 2022 with his debut album, Watin, named after his grandfather. In 2004, Aysanabee made history when he became the first Indigenous artist to win Juno Awards for Alternative Album of the Year and Songwriter of the Year for Here and Now. His latest album, Edge of the Earth, was released in June 2025. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with us here this week.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
And lucky because you're here in Winnipeg for a show that I thought I was going to tonight, but took place last night. What a wild 3 years it must have been for you since the release of your debut, your Polaris Prize shortlisted debut album, the #1 songs, the history-making Juno wins. 3 albums in all that time too is pretty crazy. Have you had a chance to soak that all in?
Here and there, I get little kind of, wins of it. Like because we're just on the road all the time and we're working all the time, and I think it's easy to go on social media and see all the wins, but what you don't see is like the thousands of hours of work, right? But yeah, even with the Juno, we played the Junos, and then the next day we went and played in Texas, and then the same thing with this past Junos, we played, and then we had to hop on a plane to go to play somewhere else. But I was thinking about that actually somewhat recently, because for a while that kind of messed me up. It was like when I got the Songwriter of the Year award, I remember for a few months, every time I'd try and write a song, I'd be like, Songwriter of the Year wouldn't write that. And then I just got in my head about it, but then kind of recognized that it was my peers and colleagues and fans and music appreciators who just kind of were recognizing what I was doing. But then I thought about that, and I just looked at who else won that award. And it was pretty wild, because there's only 50 people who've won it. Right. One of them's The Weeknd, Shawn Mendes, Leonard Cohen, Alanis Morissette, Gord Downie, I just get to be one of those people, which is pretty wild to think about.
Yeah, that's insane to think about. And yeah, I wouldn't want to. I could see how that might mess with you a little, where you're like, hey, well, now every song's got to be, got to be up there for Song of the Year again. A lot of highlights mentioned there. Any of those or others been really sticking with you?
I think it's just kind of going and touring around. I try not to think about awards too much. I do appreciate it, and I love going to those spaces and just seeing people that I know and catching up and see how everybody else's journeys have been, because I've over the course of the last 3 years have made really great friendships with a lot of people in the industry, but we're always kind of ships in the night. Mm-hmm. But yeah, no, I think just going around and playing and singing these songs and telling these stories have been the most kind of eye-opening, heart-filling experiences. This year we got to go to Australia and Norway and Germany and a bunch of festivals, and the first headline tour across Canada. But we were in Taiwan, and it was really wild, because I went there and we toured for a few weeks and played a festival and played a bunch of shows all around the island. And I didn't know how big Taiwan was in population. There's 23 million people there, right. And the island is 6 times the size of PEI. And so, but I didn't know a lot about the Indigenous culture there either. So I spent 7 days with different Indigenous communities in Taiwan, because they're very much in the same spot as a lot of people here in Canada, reconnecting with their roots and trying to rebuild what was taken in some cases, because Taiwan was pretty heavily colonized by other countries, and there's still a bunch of geopolitical stuff there. But to spend time there, and like I remember there was this one elder who was like playing a drum and singing a traditional song in front of what was almost very similar to a longhouse, and he was singing the song, and it was like so similar to the traditional songs we have here. And then we went into the mountains to this like the first indigenous post-secondary school in the mountains, and the girls' wing, like they showed us this traditional dance. You know, we shared some songs, and they showed us this dance, which was like kind of like a round dance,
right?
And it was like so wild because I was like, "Are you sure this is yours?" You know what I mean? Like it was so wildly similar. But I got to play at the Prehistory Museum, which is like prehistory, pre-colonization of Taiwan, and like I played and sang songs, and then there was this Q&A at the end of it, and everyone just got to like ask me questions and stuff. And then at one point, this elder in the back got the mic, and she needed a translator, and she was talking, and she was just starting to get emotional and talking about how she's like, when you told that story about your grandfather and him not being able to speak his language in that school, like she's like, I had a very similar experience, and like for a long time I wasn't able to practice my culture, and I wasn't able to speak my language out of fear of punishment. And so it's just kind of wild to kind of have, because if you look geographically, like Taiwan's almost the complete opposite side of the planet, but to have such a shared connection, shared history, very similar songs and dance. It's wild.
Yeah, that sounds like an amazing experience there. Prior to the show, we were talking about Thunder Bay and some of the songs, some of the shows back then, which I'm pretty sure I saw you play with the band The Communication a few times back in the day. Great music scene there. What was it like for you, I guess, coming up in that scene?
Yeah, it was pretty rough and tumble town for sure, but I definitely found my community within the music space there. There was like when I was there was a really great group of musicians, and I think Coleman Hell actually was there as well, and it was wild to kind of see him blow up, but yeah, I would say there's definitely spaces in that city, and there's room for, you know, not positive interaction, but you know, you find your community, and mine was playing shows at the Black Pirates Club, playing shows at the Office, and playing shows and just growing in that way.
Huge shout out to Black Pirates Pub. Should have worn my shirt when they put those out for the anniversary during COVID. You know, you mentioned Coleman Hell, and not a lot of big names have really broken out of Northern Ontario or northern spaces.
Yeah.
When did you feel like you got that big break?
I mean, I still feel like I'm working on it. Like,
right.
It's interesting. Like, every once in a while, like, I'll go to the airport. I live in Toronto now. And like I'll go on tour somewhere, and like I'll see somebody like just Dallas Green just like wheeling his like carry-on bag to go catch his flight, and I got like 3 guitars and my merch and my stuff, and I'm just like, oh man, I'll get there someday. Yeah. But no, I think the fact that I'm able to, like, this is my full-time career, this is what I do full-time, I'm able to go to places, and I still haven't gotten used to like walking into a grocery store and like hearing my music playing in there, like buying groceries. And it was funny too, because like while that was happening, like when I was just like, that's so crazy, I did bump into this journalist who like, she had interviewed me, and she just came up and she's like, oh, I didn't know you just shopped here like the rest of us. I was like, what?
You buy your own groceries?
Yeah, no. My butler was sick today, so I have to. No, it was wild. Yeah, it's still it's only been like three and a half years since I've been doing this professionally, I guess. So.
Yeah, pretty wild how quick everything has gone. Watin, your debut album, which was named after your grandfather, his portraits, the cover art. It's not often that the making of an album kind of becomes, you know, such a big part of the story. Like Bon Iver's for Emma Forever goes like one of those ones that I think of. But can you tell us a bit about the creation story here with that album and what it means for you?
Yeah, you know, it started out just with conversation. Like I moved to Toronto to pursue music, but then I ended up going to college for journalism, and I ended up working in journalism, and then, you know, I flew up to Thunder Bay, and my grandfather was being moved into long-term care, and you know, I moved him into long-term care, and I imagine it's somewhat similar in Manitoba than it is in Ontario, where it's like often, you know, underfunded and understaffed, and like the staff are doing the best they can, but like all of the rooms can be quite, it's like a hospital room, you know, and it's just like, I remember spending a week up there, moving my grandfather into the space and trying to make it seem more like a home and more like the place he had just been living and had been independent. And I remember spending a week with him and then flying home because I had to go back to work. And I was on the flight, and then suddenly like everyone's pulling out their phones, and it's like pandemic declared in Canada. And then so I get back to Toronto, and then I'm working and I'm doing like COVID-19 updates every day at work. Like I'm reporting on Justin Trudeau when he's at his podium, like giving me updates every day. And then eventually, you know, starts talking about different outbreaks, and outbreaks that started happening at long-term care facilities where I just moved my grandfather. And then, you know, then he started doing death toll updates. And, you know, then I started calling my grandfather, worried an outbreak would happen there. And then that, you know, eventually rolled into these interviews. But, like, you know, because we can only talk about the weather and the small talk for so long, right? And then we eventually started talking about his life and his stories and our extended family, and there were certain details of these stories which I remembered that he didn't, so then I think I just got this sense of urgency to record some of these stories and save some of our family history. So I asked him if it would be all right if I started interviewing him, and he's like, yeah, of course. And for like every day for that whole year, every day before work, I would call him, have a coffee, and then I'd interview him for an hour. And unsure of what I'd do with the recordings, I just wanted to have our history there. If I ever have a family, I could be like, this is where we come from, you know? I think it's different when it comes to identity for Indigenous people, because like we don't have these like great museums, and we don't have these massive text, you know, like recorded history. At least it didn't feel like it at the time. And so I just felt like I needed to save a small part of that. And, you know, flash forward a year, and, you know, we're in heavier restrictions, can't go visit. And it's the holidays, and I'm just like listening to some of these recordings at home, and then I'm just like kind of noodling on guitar at the same time. And then, you know, one of his stories just really struck me, and then ended up writing a song. And then that's when I was like, okay, like maybe I can just work on this project and capture a bit of his story. And like I literally thought it would take like 4 or 5 years to finish this record. I was like, you know, when I'm not too tired from doing news, I will work on this record. But that's when I signed with Ishkade Records. I was like scrolling social media one day, and it was like, apply to play the International Indigenous Music Summit. And I almost didn't do it because it was $40. And I was like really militant on paying off my student debt. So I was like, I joke sometimes that my music career almost didn't happen over $40.
Right.
But I did the application fee, and I sent in this performance video, and these 2 women were like, who are you, and how come we've never heard of you before? And they're like, what are you working on? And I was like, oh, I just started this project. Like, I'm just like, I'd interviewed my grandfather all year, and I have a demo and just an idea of that I want to go through all these recordings and tell just a small piece of his story. And you know, they called me 2 weeks later, and they're just like, hey, we have this wild idea. We want to start this brand new record label, and we want you to be the first signing. It was the first Indigenous female-owned record label in the country, and then it's kind of, that really ignited that record for me because, left to my own devices, I will take my time. I would have
5 years.
I will have maybe taken the 5 years, but as soon as like other people are started waiting on me, I'm just like, all right, you know what? Maybe I won't watch Netflix tonight. Maybe I'll just work on this record. And so I really dug down and worked on this record. And it was really wild. It was really wild. Like, it didn't quite click to me, like, how far the record would go, like, until much later. I think as, like, things started happening, we started playing shows, started doing interviews, and I started to realize that more people were going to hear this record. Mm-hmm. And I started getting, like, actually a little scared in some ways. Scared because of the context of the record. Like, I was starting to get scared that, like, a residential school survivor would hear the record and then, like, they would get, like, re-triggered and re-traumatized. And but we put out the record, and I think it was months later, like, I got a message on social media, like on Facebook of all places. And I rarely check Facebook, but I was just on there updating my artist page or whatever, and I got this message from this woman, and she was like, said a lot of really lovely things, but to, like, kind of just narrow it down, she's like, I got my granddaughter to help me, like, make this profile so I get to talk to you. And she's just like, I listened to the record and I just really wanted to talk to you about it. And, like, to sum it up, she was just like, it's really beautiful that, like, our stories are finally being told by our people in our words. And she was a residential school survivor, so suddenly this fear I had just kind of like lifted a little bit.
Great message to get, for sure. Much more to talk about here. We just have to step aside for a quick break, and then we'll continue the conversation here on Face to Face with Aysanabee. Stick around. Welcome back to Face to Face. Our guest this week is Juno Award-winning musician Aysanabee. And before the break, we were talking about your breakthrough debut, and you really wasted no time on following that up with the EP Here and Now. Did you, I guess, feel some pressure that you needed to get some more new music out?
A bit, but I was always working on new music. I think it kind of, the struggle with that record for me, I think, was following it up from that first record that became part of, like, a larger conversation in this country, to suddenly, like, here's my Taylor Swift breakup album. Yeah. Like, it was, it was kind of wild, but yeah, no, it's it's wild what followed with that record, though, to be honest. Like, I wasn't expecting that album to, like, get nominated for those Junos and win those Junos. So when we were nominated, we were in that room, like, I thought maybe like I had a shot at the, like, Contemporary Indigenous Award, and actually I thought I had won it because Alyssa P won it, but, like, Alyssa P, Aysanabee, and, like, hosts who have struggled to say either name.
Right.
So they're like, Aysanabee.
Yeah.
And, like, we both looked at each other and we're like, it was kind of this funny thing, and I was like, so glad she just went, because, like, it would have been kind of awkward for me. But anyways, yeah, it was a wild thing to put that out as fast as we did, because, like, even with this new record, like, we're just on the road all the time. So the fact that we managed to do it, I think I'm still surprised.
Like you say, following up your debut, which was, like, this bigger conversation, but then the EP makes, and you make history again, as you mentioned, winning 2 Junos that are outside of the Indigenous categories. The first Indigenous person to do that. There's been criticism for years over the fact that Indigenous people are often not up for these awards. Did that feel pretty important for you, and do you think for others to take home those 2 awards?
Yeah, and I think even just that whole night in general, like, when I went up there and did the acceptance speech, like, I was glad I had time to, like, acknowledge the fact that it had been the most Indigenous artists ever nominated that year. So, like, I had asked everyone to stand up, like, all the Indigenous artists in the room to stand up and be seen, and, like, you don't really get to see that on like the broadcast because the camera was just on me, but like what I saw was like kind of this like fancy gala dinner where like, you know, never feel comfortable in those spaces, but then suddenly just like dozens of people stand up across the room, and it was just such a wild thing to see.
Yeah, those Junos definitely felt different. You know, there was a long stretch where I didn't even watch the Junos, but got to say that 2024 tribute to Gordon Lightfoot and Robbie Robertson, one of the best performances I've ever watched on TV. And again, right away, like you said, another new album this past June, releasing Edge of the Earth. Has the music just been kind of pouring out of you?
Yeah, you know, if I have time, for sure. Like, that record, like the songs were written over the course of like the last 2 years and 2.5 years, and I don't know, it was like a good look. I think it was the first time putting out music where I offered people kind of a look at who I am as an artist, contextually, but also sonically. I had like a lot of fun working on that record and like kind of co-producing a bunch of songs and just kind of exploring different soundscapes. But yeah, no, this year though I haven't had a chance to write too much. I think I'm kind of vanishing in February for a while, so.
Time to take a breath, take a little time off the road too?
Yeah, time off the road, but time to write and reflect. And you know, sometimes I'll be on tour and like, you know, I have something in my luggage or a little gift or like even just a little note I had written in my notepad. I'm like, oh yeah, like, can't believe like that it happened. And so like so much has happened in the last 3 years that I just really need to take time to appreciate it.
Absolutely. Really dig the new album, and we're gonna be lucky enough to hear you play a song for us called Home. Anything you'd like us to know about the song? Yeah,
you know, I wrote that song with my dear friend Lala Noel, and you can hear her voice all over my records. She's like one of my oldest friends, and I never really wrote songs with other people for the longest time. Like that's only a recent development within the last couple of years. I was always such an island when it came to writing. It's like to be vulnerable, to be open, to be. I always felt a discomfort in that somehow, but. In the last while, I've started opening myself up to that, and I don't know. There's something really beautiful that happens when you write with someone who sees you, and you see them, and there's like a really special kind of alchemy that happens there. So we were both going through the exact same thing in life at that time. So that song was definitely really easy for us to have a conversation with each other about the same thing, about the same feeling, and put it onto paper and write a song. So yeah, it's a song, it's an anthem of letting go.
Good stuff. Well, we'll be hearing that after the break. Thanks so much for doing the show. Huge fan, love all the albums, and really appreciate you taking some time here for us.
Hey, thank you.
And so we are going to step aside for one last quick break, but stick around. We'll be getting a performance coming up here on Face to Face. Welcome back to Face to Face. It's been our pleasure to sit down this week with Juno Award-winning Oji-Cree musician Aysanabee. We're going to leave you this week with a performance from Aysanabee and his song Home from his latest album, Edge of the Earth.
Doesn't have to feel like holding up a mountain. Doesn't have to feel like being crushed by the weight of it. If you hold out, hold it up now. If you hope, I hope it will be enough. If home is with the hardest, we must be heartsick. We can't go back, we can't go back, we can't go back. And honey, I'm okay with that. You can take everything I have. leave us in a place. 'Cause some things are not meant to, no, some things are not meant to live. It doesn't have to feel like holding back the water. Doesn't have to feel like we're swimming the same. If you turn out shaking right up to you, if you hope out, it will be enough. If home is with the hardest, then we must be heartless. We can't go back, we can't go back, we can't go back. And honey, I'm okay with that. You can take everything now. Go ahead and leave us in a place. 'Cause some things are not meant to, no, some things are not meant to live. Used to sing, I go home, home. 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 And honey, I'm okay with that. You can take everything now. Go ahead and leave us in a place. 'Cause some things are not meant to, no, some things are not meant to, some things are not meant to live.